Hi everyone, Joe Adams here, U.S. immigration lawyer based in Los Angeles. I'm really excited to introduce you today to Navroop Sahdev. Navroop is originally from India and made her long journey to the United States via MIT, Harvard, and then she founded a global think tank in Washington, D.C. called The Digital Economist. Think blockchain, crypto, the leading technological issues of the day. Navroop is now based in Brooklyn, and I can't wait for you to meet her. Navroop, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to share your story with the audience at home on YouTube.
Joe, thanks for having me. Always exciting to talk to you.
So Navroop, you currently have a green card. That means you're a permanent resident of the United States. But it's been a long journey for you. How did you start this process? How did you come from India all the way to the United States?
Oh, well, it is a long story. It actually starts even before I got to the US. I had never imagined that I would end up in the US. And I will come back to like why and how that happened. But I came here as a J1 short-term scholar visa, which was sponsored by Harvard because I did my thesis work at Harvard Kennedy. And I think for me, that was, it was never on the radar as such. Of course, US is the largest economy in the world. We know that as economists. And I really fell in love with the entrepreneurial energy of the US.
You grew up in India, and my recollection of our conversations from first getting to know you many years ago was that you felt that there were certain expectations culturally upon you. Were those things that you sought to escape from, or were they things that influenced you in your decision to move to the United States?
Going from India to a bunch of European countries where I did my second and third graduate degree, and then sort of ending up in the US was sort of a process which was never imposed upon me. But I think, again, as a knowledge worker, this is a very conscious decision you make, and it's not like, oh, you were pushed out of India or something. That is not true. Let me share a quick statistic. The Indian American families are the highest median wage families in the US. So they are doing the best. So the US gets the best of the best of 1.4 billion people, which is the largest country in the world, because we have a very low cost training system from education in STEM and other domains as well. So, those people do very well in the American context, right? Again, sort of that entrepreneurial energy and what have you. At the time in 2015, when I was here for the first time, it was very much kind of, I was considering whether I should stay back in France, which is not a bad country. And, social security, medical, care is much better, right? And then, of course, a much faster path to a better life, for the lack of a better term, the so-called blue card, which is the, European equivalent of the green card. But I think the path was much harder, was much more challenging, and much longer in the US, twice as long, if not less. So I'm not sharing this to say it is a bad thing or a disincentive. I'm sharing this to say I think it's worth it. The higher challenges you face, I think the more your I think character and life and entrepreneurship is developed in terms of sensibilities. And for me, I don't regret, taking the longer and the more challenging route to be here.
You've lived all over the United States since the time I've met you all those years ago. My recollection is Brooklyn, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Hawaii during the pandemic. I remember chatting with you then, and Washington, D.C. Did I get it? Did I get it all right?
Yeah, well, we want to throw in Los Angeles, California,
Of
right?
course.
Which is
How
how
can we
we
forget
first met.
LA?
Exactly. Redondo Beach, I guess, to be precise. And then I also spent some time in Puerto Rico, which is also interesting indeed. But I think very much sort of the economic activity and sort of the interesting parts of the US, at least for us as immigrants by choice, end up being the coastal parts of the US.
Looking back when you were a young person, could you ever have envisioned yourself taking on this adventure?
I have not. I so have not. I am so grateful for all the dreams that are coming true. And also, really the freedom, I think, for me, sort of being in the US, particularly being in New York, by the way, has this sort of eclectic energy that you can be anything, you can become anything, and you don't have to be anyone that, or any one thing. You could be all of those. For me, that's extremely liberating. And I think, obviously, again, from a philosophical perspective, life is not just your career, it's not just your money. There are sensibilities beyond that, your interest in arts and cultures, and I think, of course, the great American cities provide so much opportunity to engage with that, and particularly in New York, how well connected it is to the world, kind of the capital of the world in many ways. And yeah, I would have never dreamt of living what I am, and to be honest with you, I think dreams have like this quality to it, which is that the more you achieve, the bigger you dream, which I think is a good analogy of how growth happens in life.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you that relates to what you founded several years ago. You're the founder of the Digital Economist, which is a global think tank. Could you explain to the audience what that is?
4 years ago, I had this epiphany that the economics of emerging technologies need to be written and rewritten. A lot of the economics, actually, because we are stuck with old methodologies and frameworks that are not serving uh, either life-centered systems. Again, with climate change, we have to look at it in the context of the global reality and reality of life, but also the sort of computationally very narrow frameworks we had. And those constraints are being lifted again with AI, with the kind of computational capacity we have now was simply like not there 5, 10 years ago. So what we do at the Digital Economist is to combine and ask, well, with digital technologies, how can we build better systems, life-centered systems and human-centered systems? So it's kind of a rethinking of economic models, but it's also engaging with the world in a way that serves collective outcomes, serves the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and it serves, the geopolitical realities and the risks that have since increased, I think, over the past decade or so with climate change as well. In that context, the work that lies ahead, again, very exciting. We're looking at applied AI. We're looking at uh, digital infrastructure. We're looking at energy transition and security. We're looking at Africa as the next, which you are part of as well, Joe, as the next frontier, as the demographic dividend shifts from India to Nigeria as well. So all exciting things.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So a few years ago, the Digital Economist was very focused on blockchain technology and the use of distributed ledgers. And Navroop is one of the leading experts in the world on distributed ledgers, blockchain technology. Now the focus is so much on AI. If you're sort of a Svengali figure in my mind, you're way out front of where the economy is, and you're thinking about things years in advance of most people. Where do you kind of see AI headed in the next year, 5 years, 10 years out, or can you even sort of give us an estimate?
5 years is a little hard, but I think for the next year or two, I can definitely see that there's going to be a lot more use cases. What we're seeing as we talk to partners and clients and everyone in the ecosystem is everybody's grappling to understand how to put AI to work to gain efficiencies, to also reduce, which is by the way a problem, the overhead in companies, how to become more augmented with what machines can do. So sort of this machine human interface is very interesting. And there's a lot of rethinking organizations are doing. So right now it's a future of work that we are, working on, but it's very much also, I mean, look, there's digital divide that's increasing and opening up at an exponential pace. And I don't think most of the organizations and people realize how much difference there is in the capacity of a large organization that can deploy LLMs and other, large language models or machine learning models versus almost everybody else. I mean, even you and I, even if we're, playing with some consumer type of, tools like ChatGPT and others, which is interesting. But I think at the back end, from an infrastructure perspective, that divide is opening up massively. So those are some of the like really hard questions and issues that we deal with, we advise companies on, etc.
So there may be some bubbles going on in the world of AI, as there was in blockchain and dumb money. Justin Bieber buying an NFT of a monkey for millions of dollars. Maybe that's at some point in the future not going to happen.
Yeah, I would say AI is a lot smarter than sort of the dumb money in blockchain. But what I specifically mean by last year is just because of this herd effect that investors have.
Yeah.
And there's a reasoning behind it, because if other investors are putting money in something, it means there's supply of capital that would push up the share prices of these, well-funded startups. So you kind of see these unicorns emerging in 10 months period. I mean, it was impossible to conceive of, 10 years ago. But with AI, because it's so exponential and scalable, you have like 3 people who can build a unicorn company in less than a year. That's really remarkable.
So last year, the digital economist at Davos at the World Economic Forum launched the Africa Coalition, and you were the spearhead of that effort. And I was privileged enough to be able to attend in person last year. And what struck me was Davos, the World Economic Forum, has a reputation of being very elite, very white, very male, very old money. And what struck me about the Africa Coalition was there were women, people of color, LGBTQ people. It was a very diverse group of people focused on non-extractive versus extractive uses in Africa to lift all boats, so to speak. What do you see in store for the future for your Africa Coalition initiative?
Yeah, no, thank you, Joe. It was great to have you, and great to have you speak as well. And everything you shared was, I think, really inspiring for the audiences. We convened the second annual, convening of the Africa Coalition this year in Davos. So last month was very successful, actually, with 3 partners. We've launched a membership of the Africa Coalition as well. We had hundreds of people sign up, and some of the top, venues in Davos as well. That we did this in, along with PwC, with WiseKey, and then our third partner was Diversity Collective, or Can Inkwell Beach. So it's growing, it's building out those strategic initiatives. That's sort of work ahead of us, and strategic partnerships. And what the beauty, I think, of Davos is sort of the catalytic impact it has on stuff that you do there and stuff that comes from it. The world moves quickly, but you're right. It is not very diverse there. I'm happy to report from like this year on, things are starting to shift quite a bit. We had, I think our years of being the only ones with the most diverse groups that we gathered around us. But I think now that landscape is starting to shift. So, I mean, we see this as a victory of the work that we've been championing as well. And that will continue to grow.
Final question. What would you say to someone who is thinking about embarking upon a journey to the United States, who's considering pursuing a life in the United States? Maybe she's a young person from India, maybe she's a person from somewhere in Africa. What would you say to that young person about what she be thinking about in terms of considering relocating to the United States?
Yeah, I would say think of a non-linear path and think of being proactive. You are responsible for your life in the US. I don't think there's any country where you have to be more proactive, but then you reap the rewards of that. I think, I think the social security type of system in Europe that you see, it's very different from that, where, you're the child of the state and so on and so forth. But I do think that if you're talking about people from India and Africa in particular, from the global south, there is that hunger, the word that we use is that drive, I think the American equivalent, to bootstrap yourself, to bootstrap your life. So I think in many ways, people coming from countries where there are, ongoing development challenges, even if they may have grown in a different context within that country, are very much used to being self-starters, being proactive. And I would say, do it. I mean, generally speaking, I think we should pursue our dreams in life. And I think the US is such a fertile ground, right? Because it attracts talent from all around the world. And if you can be in some of these hub cities or bubbles, if you may, of intellectuals. I was very privileged to be part of these at Harvard and MIT. You can go a really long way. I mean, you're kind of at the heartbeat of the world. So I would say.
If you're in the audience and are looking to learn more about Navroop, the Digital Economist, or the Africa Coalition, I'll put links in the description to all of her social media and her websites. Navroop, my friend, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to see what you have in store for us next.
Thank you, Joe. I think you're a big part of this journey as well. So I can't wait also to see how we journey together. So thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. We always learn something new from each of these different stories. If you'd like to learn more, I've written a book called Extraordinary Aliens, 12 People Who Pursued Wealth, Fame, and the American Dream. It's available on Amazon, so check it out.